All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. My name is Thinker St. James, and tonight we are going over Real American Freestyle, taking a look at the upcoming One Championship card and answering questions from you, the greatest audience in MMA podcasting. To do all of that with me, as always, the greatest co-host in MMA podcasting, Chase Parton. Chase, how are you, brother?
We are awesome. It is another good weekend. Of course, we don't have UFC, but it's okay. We get to talk about some other shit that's going on, and I'm really excited to get on here and talk some shop. Of course, Thinker. I'm excited, man.
Absolutely. And, you might have noticed that we let the theme song play out a little bit longer than we normally do. We had to get the second loop of it in because if you didn't notice, people, we have a brand new Last Week's Fights theme song made for us by the extremely talented Bloomis, and it is such a banger. So had to give you guys a little extra of that. So hopefully you enjoyed that. For our audio only podcast listeners, people on podcast platforms, you do not get that. Go to the YouTube channel, either youtube.com/@yamashow or youtube.com/@CP Smalls. Check out the live VOD to get yourself acquainted with the new theme song because it is just so good.
Oh, absolutely. That shit was fire. I'm actually glad you let it loop a second time because I was like, damn, that shit was good. And hopefully the chat, I'm not seeing them here in the chat currently, but hopefully they got to at least get a good listen live because I was vibing. And then when it started, man, I was mad that it was over. So I'm excited to hear it every Monday now.
Absolutely. Same. Yes. And as you had said, of course, we are still in the depths of MMA winter. This long 6 week stretch without UFC has been just that, very long, very arduous for a lot of people. I'm seeing it throughout all of the groups, Chase. These people talking about how difficult their Saturdays have become. I don't even want to hang out on weekends now. I've got nothing to do. Trust that we feel your pain out there, of course, but there are still fights to talk about a little bit here and there. And of course, as we said, we've got some great questions from the community that we will be answering a little later in the show. So starting this thing off, I watched Real American Freestyle. This is freestyle wrestling. That was last Saturday. And it was interesting. It was definitely something different. If we watch like CJI and BJJ events sometimes on the channel, I would say that this was similar to that. It's a different vibe. Obviously, these are different sports, of course. Lack of striking is apparent throughout all of those, and that gives it its own sort of flavor. But if you take it for what it is and try to get into it based on like what you're actually viewing, I had a good time with this. I enjoyed this event.
No, absolutely. I was, as everybody knows, Thinker was streaming for this event, and I was at the event with Thinker. I was living vicariously through him when he was watching this one, and it was pretty fun. I'll tell you, he seemed like he was having a decently good time. And right off the bat, the first thing that I'll say is the pacing seemed to be phenomenal. I mean, I don't know if I would say phenomenal. I mean, 2 hours quick sounds a little on the quick side, but hey, I'll take it. That sounds pretty fun to me. That's like your average, pro wrestling runtime for your weekly event. I guess if this is a wrestling event, close enough.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because yeah, when I was on the live stream, I was saying that this was my first wrestling event that did not involve people going off of the top rope. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so the like the pacing was great. I thought it was great. I mean, these are shorter matches, so like it's two periods, I guess they call it, and 5 minutes a pop for those. I think or 5 or 3 minutes. I forget that aspect of it, but either way, it's short. I mean, it's not or actually, I think it's 2.5 minutes because I think it's 5 minutes total for each match. So it moves nicely. And what I liked the most about it was the athleticism that you saw from these guys because they've got this very large platform that acts as their mat and their competition area. With that, you basically get to see them kind of doing all of these wrestling moves throughout the entirety of the surface area. And so you get a lot of movement, a lot of explosiveness out of some of these guys. So, some more than others, of course. And from that, you get to see a lot of good physicality. The one thing for me that was a little bit difficult to follow along with was how they were deciding the point system. Because, I'm just not as familiar with all of like what counts as points versus moves that do not when it comes to freestyle wrestling. But overall, I mean, the elements that I enjoyed with it. Like I was starting to pick it up as the card went along, and yeah, there was some good stuff, and of course some names that you would be familiar with, even though a couple did not compete. This card, like so many cards that we see in combat sports, got a little bit turned upside down. You know, a couple of things changed here and there as far as people and their opponents, and some people didn't compete, et cetera, et cetera. And I can talk through a little bit of that if you'd like.
Well, the main question I have is there's two actually. Do you think people showed up and they said, "Where's the ring? Like, where's the ropes?" Like, do you think that was an actual type of people that showed up there? And second, was this better than the rope flying WWE stuff? You know, was this an event that, you know, you could say more people are going to catch on to as time goes on, just as people would go on with any sport? Is this going to, you know, captivate the audience? I mean, WWE, it captivates a large amount of audiences. You know, is this going to have some similar potency to the market?
Well, to answer that one first, no, I don't think so. I think that this is designed for a very specific type of audience, and I'm actually in the grand scheme of things with that, I am very glad that something like this exists. I think that's what I'd said before this launched was that like I think that it's an underserved community of fans because a lot of people in high school and college age they do this type of wrestling. This is very prevalent in schools and stuff. And then once you get out of that sort of era of your life and that era for these competitors, there's really not much of a path forward thereafter unless they want to go into something like MMA or pro wrestling is another one that some do, like Kurt Angle, who actually was at the event, which was kind of cool. But you know, so yeah, I think that this is like this is a niche that I do think has an audience, and there was an audience there. But then to answer your second question, I don't think that people were showing up thinking that it was pro wrestling because I don't think that there was a large amount of people there, period. Now, this was at the Amerant Bank Arena, which I am familiar with because that is where the Florida Panthers hockey team plays. So I know that arena very well. It's only a few hours down the road from myself. And you could definitely tell that this was not like a packed event. There was definitely room for more people to pile in there as they desired. And so again, I think it's a hyper focused sort of niche, but there's still value to that. And if Real American Freestyle and Fox Nation, which is their broadcast partner, if they're happy with that pairing, I think that it should continue on because I thought that like for people who are interested in this specifically, there was definitely value to be had. And apparently, from what I understand, obviously there are MMA fighters that you know by name, but the non-MMA fighters, the actual just wrestlers, straight wrestlers, apparently are the best in the world. So you know this is a nice place for them to be able to showcase their skills and do it in on a platform that they deserve because it hasn't been one for a while.
Hell yeah. And, you know, I think before we get into a few of these, I think we'll just go ahead and shout out the chat real quick, of
Of
course.
course.
Sarah Toby and Lanchlin Marshall.
Lachlan.
Nice. Lachlan Marshall, my bad, man.
Absolutely. Lachlan, the man, and Sarah Toby, the queen. Appreciate you guys checking in and thank you very much for being here. So yeah, you know, I mean, really, I don't want to like try to break down all of these fights in the way that we normally would, of course, because I'm not qualified to do that. And really, there are some that were better than others, but a couple that I did want to at least touch on. So Giorgio versus Muggsy. Giorgio, I think it's Puelas is his name. And he was very talented. I think he ended up getting the full tech. So a tech, I've come to understand, is when you get a 10-point differential. So if you have 0 points and your opponent gets 10, that is tech. If you have 2 points and your opponent gets 12 points, that's the tech. So you need to get 10 more points than your opponent to win the match unless you get a full-on pinfall. And we were seeing some good full-on routings in a couple of these. I don't remember. Actually, no. Yeah, I think the Giorgio might have gotten the full-on 10-point tech, more than 10 actually. I think he ended up with like 12 points in total. He was one that certainly was to keep an eye on if you're in the wrestling world. Then, of course, the other one going down, like if we're going up from the bottom of this card here, Downey did not end up competing, I believe, because there was Yoel Romero was on this card. He missed weight by a significant amount. Bo Nickel did not want to take the match with Romero with Yoel having missed that much. So Bo was there and got booed by the audience, which was kind of funny because he came out and was like talking about, how, he's just, it's not the right thing to do and this and that. And everybody was kind of like, probably should have just done it. But that's up to him. Same as MMA. I would not take it away from him for not taking a match when someone missed weight by a large amount, because I believe that Yoel missed by like 7 pounds, which is a ridiculous amount to miss weight by. That's why he ended up having to compete in the next weight class up. And so Yoel ended up going against Buchanan. And Buchanan was the fucking man, because he took Yoel out like nobody's business. Now, granted, Yoel had competed like 3 weeks ago and he won, but Yoel also being an older guy at this point, probably not the greatest idea to do quick turnaround, missing the weight, not doing great in the competition. So Buchanan definitely getting his accolades in there.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought that up. There was a couple that I wanted to touch on with the stories, Yoel missing weight and then him still competing, of course, was interesting because I remember I said in the Discord, a lot of people were asking, who's on right now? Like, should I tune in? And I'm like, yeah, Yoel's on. And they're like, he pulled out. And I'm like, no, well, he's got a new opponent. And they're like, what are you talking about? And so, interesting enough, they had to, figure out that the event is still going on and Yoel is still competing, but no Bo Nickel. And obviously we had some slight shifting in the card.
Correct.
That is definitely one touching point. I remember you on your stream talking about how Yoel is definitely starting to show his age. At one point we once believed that he was, the Terminator kind of deal, but now he's starting to look like an older version of himself, is what I believe you were trying to, go
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's really, I think the fact that like he can still probably live up to that reputation and that what you would think that a person of that stature can do, but not if you're trying to do it back to back. Again, parallels to pro wrestling. It's like, I'm sure that there are older competitors in that sport that can come out and put on like a great performance. But if you tried to have them on the regular rotation when they're doing it week over week, it's just they can't keep up with that after a certain point. And I think that's what you were seeing with Yoel in this one. He just looked very out of sorts against Buchanan, who was obviously like way more prime and very strong himself. So that was unfortunate as far as Yoel goes. But again, the weight miss kind of throws everything into a tailspin, and a couple other these like switch ups sort of kind of made everything kind of jumbled.
Well, I'm glad you were talking about Yoel missing weight or not missing weight. Well, yes, missing weight, but also have competing before, a couple weeks before, whatever you were saying, showing his age, those things correlate, but it doesn't correlate for somebody who's younger, like Armin. He was just wrestling Guru the day before, and now he just got into wrestling the freestyle, and he did good, right?
He did great. I don't know if the chat was trolling me lightly on this one or not, because they were saying that Palmer, who Arman Sarukian was competing against, was supposed to be, I guess maybe they were saying pulling the upset, but they made it seem like Sarukian winning was this major upset. But then someone else had told me that he was a minus 500 favorite. So kind of hard for me to keep up. Again, it might have been just some light trolling on their part. But either way, Sarukian looked fantastic in this, as you kind of expected that he would. I mean, his wrestling is one of his greatest attributes. And just going in there and entirely smoking this Palmer gentleman, who didn't look like he was, somebody who would get smoked on the reg. This didn't look like a can crushing situation, but Sarukian just too nice when it comes to the athleticism, man. This guy can really move. And it was on full display in a match like this, and definitely got the job done easy. I believe that was a full on tech. I think he won that one shutout style.
Yeah, I'm actually glad to hear you say some nice things about Armin, and I know they're not biased because I know genuinely you're not a fan of Armin. So it's good to hear you say some nice things about him.
I really would have liked to have seen Guru get that takedown. Yeah, somebody in the chat did bring that up. Of course, if you were not watching on the Friday Free for All show, we watched a clip of Armin and the MMA Guru, and Guru was trying to take him down. I guess that was the arrangement, was that if Guru had landed a takedown, he would have gotten a certain amount of money, some $30,000 or whatever it was. And Guru was not able to accomplish that. And I was saying that I thought Guru was doing pretty good holding his own, but I guess what I failed to realize is that Armin was not putting forth any offense. It was literally just, I'm going to stuff your takedowns. I'm going to evade being taken down, was what Armin was doing. And so Guru did not have the greatest showing for that specifically. But again, I don't know what people were expecting. I don't care how big you are. Armin Sarukian is one of the best fighters, wrestlers, grapplers in the world right now. So I thought it went exactly as it was supposed to go. And that I didn't think that Guru made a fool of himself, I would say.
I definitely agree with that. No need for us to have three different streams where we talk about the MMA
True.
guru. But yeah, no, props to him. Shout out to him. I would not have put that much effort into it. I would have fell first and been like, all right, I'm cool.
Yeah.
There's my one. There's my one clip. But we got
Yeah.
three. We got three of them.
Absolutely, and and shout out to Armin for this performance here. I do want to highlight this comment from Lachlan saying that he couldn't find a way to stream this in Australia. The so that was a common theme throughout all of this was that apparently obviously Fox News and Fox Nation is very America first, so they're going to be very. America focused, I guess you could say. However, there were many people from around the world that were asking about watching this. We had people from a number of different countries coming into the chat saying, why can we not see this? We can't even sign up through Fox Nation for this outside of the United States. And that I thought was very odd considering that you have international competition on the card.
Well, I think you guys are missing the key point. You're saying it right in front of me. You're saying, people outside of the United States had trouble. People outside internationally, they could not figure out a link. Guys, it's real American freestyle. You do not get access if you are not in the Americas. Even South America is questionable. We are still holding it firm. American wrestling before we get it tainted. Real American wrestling. Colby Covington is sheltered for us and us only right now. I'm sorry.
Apparently so. Yeah. Well, that was, I felt bad for some of our international friends that we were gatekeeping the freestyle wrestling. But as you said, American right there in the name. So it is what it is, I guess,
Can you
right.
be surprised? Right.
That's exactly what it is. I'd say write a strongly worded letter to Fox Nation and see if they change their tune at some point. But moving on to a couple of other matches on this that I did want to highlight. The one that was getting the most attention and one that I think deserves a little bit of discussion is Bo Bassett versus, I believe it's Kyle Henschel. I want to say, I think that's his first name. Bassett versus Henschel. Both of these guys have a massive amount of support from, I guess, the wrestling community. Young guys, both of them, and I guess that they're like the future stars of freestyle wrestling, it would seem. This match, I don't know if it personally lived up to the amount of hype that it was getting, but you could see why they were both individually as highly touted as they are. I think like they're definitely talented younger guys in the game, and I think that they're going to grow into their own throughout continuing to compete and just being in this environment more. But it was just a lot of discussion about these two. And I mean, I had never, I'd heard the name. I believe I'd heard both of their names because of Real American Freestyle, but I did not know them outside of that. So interesting to see people that both have a lot of hype around them being paired up this early and then this far down the card. I would have thought that with the amount of support these guys were getting, that they would have been bumped up a little bit higher.
I hear the ref was amazing. Shout out Rolly's Chihuahua and B, by the way. Shout out both of you.
Indeed. Well, of course, Rolly's Chihuahua being Sigma, and Sigma was the reason for this live stream in the first place. So I appreciate the recommendation of Real American Freestyle. And of course, Sigma is himself a wrestler. So
Didgeridoo Dave, right on time, man. Love to see it.
Always, bro. Appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with us for this one. So that was just an interesting one. Those two, Tomasello versus DeSanto. That was for the bantamweight title, and Tomasello upset to get the. I believe I think it was Tomasello got the win there, and that was a major upset to some people. So champion fight in the middle of the card here, it would seem, or at least early on the main card.
This is what's funny. So I remember you started streaming, and I waited a little bit. It probably was like an hour and a half, and then I joined, and I was like, let's see if they're, what's going on. And then I get to this one, and I'm like, they just had a title fight in the first match of the like, what's going on here? Like, this is really early to have a title fight. And then like 20 minutes later, the event was over. So I was
Pretty
like, well,
much.
geez.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, you had that one, and you also had Oliver versus Woods, which was for the featherweight title as well. That one was an actually interesting one. That one ended up a kind of a controversial ending to that one, where I believe that it was Woods. I want to say, kill me for not remembering all the details here, but whichever guy ended up winning it, they won it in the last minute with like a push out, a step out, they call it. So it was like he kind of like got a single point to like get him out of the competition area, which counted for the point, and got it right at the last second. So that was kind of entertaining. And fight of the night was definitely Dake versus Kadik. Both of those guys, Olympic level wrestlers, very high level activity in that one. That probably should have been the main event based on everything that we were seeing here. That was really entertaining. I like that one a lot.
The thing that I want to ask is, so you're talking about how these guys had belts. You know, for a lot of these people, they're collegiate level wrestlers, right? They don't do belts, right? It's just like a little trophy you get if you win. Like, is this the first time they're actually getting an official belt to their name? Other than like, so when you're a wrestler, obviously you can go pro wrestling and you get those little phony things. But like for a wrestler, is this the first time a belt has been introduced for them, kind of deal?
I want to say yes. I mean, maybe certain places have belts or certain organizations within the wrestling world that I'm not aware of. But being that this is Real American Freestyle and it is outside of the collegiate system, this is these are actual full on organizational belts. And that's what they're winning here. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of guys get medals, obviously, Olympic medalists and stuff like that, but mostly trophies and medals, but belts in Real American Freestyle.
Nice. So what did the belt look like? I mean, was it a good look? I mean, did it look too big on some of the fighters? You know, for their first kind of go around the belts, before they rebrand and get a new style. Like, what do you think? It's good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was appropriate. Let's say that. I think it was, it reminded me
That's
of
not good.
it's not, we're not talking about over the top belts here. It reminded me of like when you'd see a belt in a regional pro wrestling organization, but not, I mean, again, we're not talking about like a crazy amount of money or resources being thrown around. I will say that as far as resources go, it did look like they put a good amount into their broadcast because they did have some nice crane shots, some tracking shots and things like that. Matt looked really good. The LED screens looked really good too.
I mean, again, this seems like a no-brainer. You're saying they have, the budget seemed well on a lot of other things. Well, when you don't have to invest in an actual octagon or a ring and it's literally just a mat on the ground, I think
True.
you could spare in other places. The lighting better be fucking good if that's the case, dude.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Well, it seemed to be up to par for me. Maybe a little bit more money going into the belts perhaps could have been, appropriate as well, but I was not dissatisfied with that aspect of it. So maybe some other people would have different opinions.
One last thing before we get into the main event. Obviously, this can lead into the main event. I think a good question that I have for, if this is the Real American Freestyle, this is your actual competitive version of pro wrestling. What was the trash talking like? What was the press conference promos? What did we have here?
I am glad that you asked that. Yes. So what I did like about Real American Freestyle for this reason is that, we have, of course, Chael Sonnen, the king of trash talk. Now, if you are familiar, which I know you and I are, Chase, because we watched the most recent season of The Ultimate Fighter, Chael has slowed down significantly in his trash talk.
Yeah.
So, Chael is really just the interview guy at this point, really. He's commentating as well, which was nice. It was Chael and Juliana Pena was also on commentary. So two decent talkers in that regard. So commentary was fine with that. Chael on the microphone is not really doing too much of his own talking, but what I enjoyed was that when it came time to interview the winners, Chael would literally hand them the microphone and just give them the floor, which I think is kind of a cool thing. A lot of times in the UFC, we don't get to see them just be unfettered like that, but these guys get the mic and they could stroll the entire mat if they wanted to, doing whatever they want. They could use it however they chose. And I thought that was an interesting and nice element of this.
I don't love that because I think there's a specific reason why you don't let everybody take the mic and walk away with it and do whatever the fuck you want, but they'll soon learn, and then there'll be a quota that comes around like, hey, no more giving them the mics because this dude just walked around here for 15 minutes singing a song and, whatever you want to say. So I think it's just interesting to note that this is part of this, of these performances. You have the promo performances. I saw a decent amount of trash talk between Colby, Luke, and Bo Nickel, before the fact. So
True.
excitement, I like that.
Yeah, well, I think that what I would hope that they do is just tell them that, like, during your post fight, like, keep it to, X amount of minutes or we're going to fine you or something like that would, I think, be a good way to do that. Because I do, like, I understand your concern there. Yes, people could just be monologuing for hours if they let them go unrestricted. But no one really did that. So I think that maybe they at least had an understanding of that. And at the same time, like, if it did go over a little bit, the whole event is 2.5 hours long max. So, I mean, you can give them a little bit of leeway perhaps, but either way was not a problem for Real American Freestyle 5, which was this event, of course. So going into the main event, like you had said beforehand, really the only major trash talking story leading into this event was Colby Covington and Luke Rockhold teaming up to trash talk Bo Nickel, which is funny. It's a funny thing to do, I guess, but it is these two specific people doing it, Goof 1 and Goof 2. So whatever, I guess. But the actual match itself was a complete trouncing and utter routing of Luke Rockhold. Colby Covington, so much more of a wrestler than Luke Rockhold is. I think Luke Rockhold even came out after the fact and said that he really didn't even know much about wrestling traditionally in general. Like, this was his first real foray into freestyle wrestling, which is kind of crazy to think that he would just be taking it up, main eventing a card and not really having any basis in it aside from some minor training and MMA training. But it certainly showed if that was the case, because Colby Covington walked all over him.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really is. You talk about real American freestyle and the comparisons that they're always going to have to the WWE and stuff like that. It is apparent that they're taking it right out of the books, because it is a WWE thing to bring somebody who has no idea and not even a pro wrestler just right into the fucking thing and just throw them in there. I've seen Floyd Mayweather in there. I've seen Mr. T in there. Like Luke Rockhold's just one of these guys. I mean, obviously not on the level of them, but like he don't know shit about it. But they throw him in there because he's a name and he'll get people to watch the event.
Yeah,
Even if he gets
absolutely.
smoked 10-0, who cares?
For sure. And that's literally what it was. I think he ended up getting smoked 14-0, which is kind of
I
wild.
thought after 10-0, I thought you won.
That's the thing that I was kind of having a little hard time wrapping my head around. But I think that you get certain moves are assigned certain point value. So like if you go up to 9 and then do a move that gets you 5
5.
points. Yeah, exactly. So it's something like that. So either way, it was a completely one-sided affair. Certainly an anticlimactic main event compared to the Dake versus Kadik fight. Like I said, that should have probably been the main event, but obviously they are not names. Covington and Rockhold are names. You know why they did what they did. Colby using his time to kind of do the same trash talking that he would do to a minor extent, I would say. But he called out GSP, which I was like, man, if you could get GSP to actually come back for something like this, there might be potential for that. GSP is very adamant about not coming back to MMA, but something sort of low stakes, no actual striking involved, something like this. Maybe GSP thinks about it.
Did this dude just buy into a Colby Covington promo in 2026?
Only if it works. It's like
Okay.
it's one of those things that it's like in football. If it works, you're a genius. If it doesn't, then you feel like a fool. But so yeah, if it works, then great. I mean, that would be kind of awesome. Him versus Colby. Again, it's way past his prime. GSP coming out of the depths of hibernation for it. So who knows what would actually happen there. It's all a bunch of fluff when it comes to that stuff. But really, I mean, I think the more bigger story of all of it is just Luke Rockhold now having lost in MMA, boxing, and a bare knuckle as well, and a now freestyle wrestling. Is there nothing that Luke Rockhold cannot lose?
Listen, I don't want to talk about his personal life, but yeah, this guy's lost a lot. I don't know, but it is what it is. He's a real American freestyle wrestler now. Maybe he'll make another run at it, or he won't, and he'll go back to another promotion that is a sport that has never existed until he joins. Who knows?
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. If somebody wants to, start the Real American Ping Pong League, then maybe Luke Rockhold has something else he can lose.
Keynote: it has to be the Real American League, so nobody else can watch it. So we gatekeep Luke Rockhold.
True. Well, that's the only way that we could really have any kind of active competition in it. From what I understand, table tennis very popular in Asia, and there's some very good players there.
I just realized there was a movie that just came out about ping pong named Marty Supreme. Free promo right there. Luke Rockhold, take notes.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. Lukey Supreme, perhaps.
There you go.
So yeah, that was Real American Freestyle. Thank you to everybody who showed up for that stream, because we had a really nice active chat for that one. Actually, also pushed your boy over the 1,000 sub mark, so that was really very appreciated. It was definitely worth the time. I enjoyed it. And like I said, I appreciated everybody who was there hanging out for it. The conversation was really good, and it was a nice introduction to freestyle wrestling that I had otherwise been unintroduced to before that.
No, absolutely. That's awesome that you got to do that. I'm really happy.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that, and appreciate you being there, of course, as well, Chase.
100%. Yeah, a lot of people in the chat were here as well. So shout out to you guys one more time, before we get into our next segment, of course.
Sure.
Everybody in there. CTE, Lachlan Marshall, Didgeridoo Dave, and Sigma and Beeb, all you guys. And Sarah, you're probably out there.
Absolutely. Appreciate you all for being here. We know how tough MMA Winter is for all of us, of course. These things are not any real replacement for mixed martial arts, but we do have something coming up this Friday that does have some striking involved in it. And we wanted to talk about that to give you a little bit of a preview for it. So, this is one Lupini 138. Of course, that is this coming Friday. And Chase, why don't you take it away? This is your wheelhouse here.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what's crazy is I'm looking at the names finally, and yeah, there's only a few that I know, but I do want to read the short synopsis that they have here so we can get some context for some of these fighters. So in the main event, we got Pomfet, which I do know him. He's pretty good, but his decorated 109 and 47 record is and dangerous finishing ability and compatriot Decho Borak. Anyway, that's flyweights. That'll be really fun. Obviously, Muay Thai flyweights. I mean, these guys are all smaller of the weights here, but when it comes to flyweights, love it. And then let me see what else we got here. So we got, oh yeah, Ubaid Hussein from Iran, I believe. He's a little further down the card. Maybe not Iran. Let me look at those flags. Is not Iran. Maybe I'm thinking of a different guy. But either way, he's 13-0, and this is another flyweight bout. And let's see. It says there's a 20-year-old from Leeds, but I don't think that's Hussein. But that is that does look like the English flag there. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, there. I wish this synopsis was better. I figured they actually were not this fucking ass because it didn't fucking tell me anything about the 20-year-old from Leeds. I don't think it's that guy, but I could be wrong. Anyway, let's see. International talent shines throughout the card. Malaysia's Rifdeen Mazdor faces Indonesia's Muhammad Redo. That's atom weight Muay Thai action. That's interesting. That's really small.
Yeah,
And
tiny
then
guys.
we get kickboxing, of course. Kickboxing portion features China's Sheng Yihang taking on Japan's Shoma Akamura at strawweight. Nice. And then, okay, while Mexico's Anwar Cisneros, I'm going to say it's that one.
Yeah.
She battles Japan's Shun Jashuri at flyweight. And then we got more MMA. We got Argentina, Lucas Ganin, and then we got Belarus. Is that a country? Is that what the place is called? Belarus?
Belarus, yes, Belarus.
Belarus. Ilyas Ezayu? Nice, nice. Okay, bantamweight. Yeah, and that is Friday. I wish they actually had more to tell us about it, other than that. Yeah, they all battle for a $100,000 contract, and that one of them is 109 and 47. But I wish this was one that I knew more people on. Like I really. Oh, Logan Chan. There you go, Scotland. There's one right there for you guys. And
Sure.
other than that, yeah. I mean, if there's anything that you want to say about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just this is one of the early cards, right? This is the early
Yes.
morning Friday morning dealy.
It should be. It's yes. Okay, so it's 6:30 p.m. for them, 6:30 a.m. for us.
Oh wow,
Okay.
6:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, so there you go. I mean, are you planning on doing the 6:30 watch along?
That'll even be easier. I'm not even gonna lie because that'll give me plenty of time to watch it before work, which I love to do on Fridays. I don't know if you guys, if you're able to be one of those people that can figure your way out how to get availability in your favor at work, but if you are able to get Friday mornings off where you can wake up, get that cup of coffee, get a little Danish, whatever you do, bagel, cream cheese, anything like the avocado toast, anything like that, and watch Muay Thai at the crack of dawn. It is an experience because when it's over, you felt like you've done an entirety of an event. You've watched so much. You have so much to gather. You have your whole day about you. Then you can just go off and maybe if you can go to work. I like to work after it because it's fun. But either way, Fridays and Muay Thai in the morning is where it's at because your whole day's ahead of you and you just saw the most violence that you're going to see for the week.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a nice way to start your day with some fights. I'll tell you. You get, getting out of bed, waking up, sun's out for you, and you roll right into some fighting. I mean, it really is an entertaining kind of start to the day. It gets you going. You have a little bit of time to, like for me personally, the way that I get to do it, thankfully, with my setup is that like I'll have the fights on, I'll have Chase's live stream on, and I'm kind of working on some stuff here. I go back, I can watch some fighting, I can chat with the chat. It's like it's a nice environment and a nice way to start off the day, especially with all of us being so in this dead time when it comes to MMA. So here is your striking. I mean, this is Muay Thai. A lot of these fights are very entertaining. It's to me almost a sad element of the time zone issue with everything, and the fact that it is on the other side of the world, because it's like I really feel like if more people were watching one championship, this could be a lot more popular with the amount of action that you get out of this. This is essentially the equivalent of a fight night, right? I mean, like this isn't one of their like marquee events. This is just regular, their rotation that they have for these events, and the action on some of these cards is like high level stuff.
I think what's also key is that they are able to maneuver perfectly coexist with the UFC, which is not the biggest deal in the grand. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it is. Obviously, for them to exist alongside with other combat sports, they have to have a schedule that works. If people are going to the UFC when they are on, they're not going to fucking get any viewership. But the fact that they're on Fridays, that gives people who have the 3-day weekend kind of mindset, you can start it so early. You can start it on Friday, and then the entirety of Friday and Sunday or Saturday morning, you get to talk about what you saw, and then boom, you have a whole day of fights with the UFC. And then if you're lucky, which is honestly not as often as it should be, considering these are their prime time events. You're supposed to believe that this is like one of the secondary promotions out here. They do not have as many nighttime events that are like your pay-per-view, PLE type of things. They don't have them as frequently, but it is 2026 and anything is possible, and there's always evolutions to sports. So maybe they'll start to have more. But in my opinion, the 6:30 fight nights, excuse me, those are where you need to be, because just like anybody who started watching out the Contender Series, or if you started out watching Apex cards because you didn't buy pay-per-views, this is that type of environment. You really get to see the sleepers. You get to see the talent unfold, because they're not doing it for the limelight. They're doing it because this is how they get fucking paid. Like, they're ready to win so much money for their family just by being an entertaining fighter. Excuse me. And once they do that, it changes their life and their region. Like, they're the top dog, and like they get all the riches. I don't know how it works, but it's different.
Yeah, absolutely. And these people on these cards really do put a lot of effort into these fights often. I mean, you're seeing some good finishes sometimes. I mean, these Muay Thai fights, of course, have the 3 knockdown rule, for 3 per round, 4 in total
Yes.
per fights. So, you will see finishes. I mean, a lot of times, like the fact that these fighters in these Muay Thai fights are not getting knocked down all the time seems crazy to me, with the amount of power that some of these people are putting on their shots.
It's just when you start watching one, specifically when you start watching these dudes who are legitly fighting to make their lives change. The people in the UFC, they've had their lives changed up until that point. They're in the UFC now. A lot of them, they take, we made it. We're at the top. The shots that you will see people take in one, and it's specifically to the body. You will see so many body shots, knees, elbows to the face, and the lack of blood is interesting, because they are slicing each other with as many elbows as you can imagine, compared to what you see in the UFC. And then also when it comes to the clinches and Jesus Christ, the clinches and like the knees, these guys are able to tank through so much damage. And then when you just watch it, and these are the lowest of the low guys compared to what you see in the UFC, who's supposed to be the top, these guys are able to, I guess it's just they're able to train their bodies in a more effective way, because some people in the UFC are not as well equipped to take damage as I've seen in one. And I think that is very important when you're trying to be when you're a confident striker, of course, like a lot of people are in one. They can take damage. I mean, that's a really good thing, because they'll just never stop coming. And that's 2 people going at each other that just won't quit, and they never fucking fall to shots. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And a shout out to CTE in the chat. He's talking about Nong O, and also mentioned Rod Tang there. What I want to say, based on what he's putting out here, is that like you have a couple of what I would consider like breakout stars from one championship, like a Rod Tang or a Stamp. You have a select couple of names, but just like in the UFC, some of these fighters that are coming up can be the next version of that. And some of those bigger names are on, the later end of their career as well. So you're always having the same basic trajectories when it comes to combat sports of people who are like trying to ascend to becoming a star and people who are, dropping off and in their time is sunsetting. So, seeing these fighters at this level is definitely great because if you are able to follow along and keep track of the names, it's a little hard to keep all the names in mind because of how many fights there are, and sometimes the names have a whole lot of letters in them. But if you are able to keep track of these things, then you can be seeing the next wave of stars being made in this organization.
No, and yeah, I'm actually just so excited for another one card. Listen, we've been a while without the UFC. We've been a little bit without one, but this is the one that I've been fiending for because this is the staple right here. This is where I make my money. Everybody is where I get up in the morning and I watch one FC and I watch people try to kill each other for $350,000 bots. It's great.
True.
Love it.
Yeah. Did we ever find out the conversion on that? What that
I
shakes
think
out
it's
to?
it's 10 grand.
10 grand. All right, there you go. Life-changing money, I'm sure. So yeah, I mean, basically just wanted to give a little bit of a preview for this card so that you can be aware of it. And if you are up in the morning or, evening for our Australian fans, you guys can all hang out with Chase and watch these. And that is a good time to be had there.
Yeah, absolutely. Would appreciate it. And, once again, appreciate all of you for being here as it is. Jesus.
Absolutely. Most definitely. Well, to keep that appreciation going, Chase, we put out a thread earlier on Discord just asking, knowing that we are in the depths of MMA Winter here, knowing that this was going to be a shorter show, regardless of what we talked about and how we did it. We put out some questions for a question and answer segment. So we got some really good responses to that. Before we get into the questions, however, I did want to ask, because like we were talking about earlier, everyone is coping with this MMA Winter differently. What are you doing outside of watching one championship or a couple of other non-UFC organizations? What are you doing to get through this time?
I'm gonna tell you guys honestly and as confidently in my gamership as I can be. I have been playing Skate, and I have been playing alongside with a community from one of my favorite YouTubers, Milky. Shout out him. There you go. That's what I've been doing. Just hanging out with the bros, building stupid shit in the park. Yep.
Indeed. I've been seeing some of the pictures you've been posting, and it does look like you are indeed building stupid shit. Because not you personally, but whoever, I've seen a lot of phallic imagery in some of these constructions in this park.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just a fun time. But what about yourself? How have you been figuring your way along here?
Really, mostly live streaming, to be perfectly honest. We have been growing really exponentially when it comes to the Yama community, which I appreciate tremendously. And from that, it's been a little bit of a challenge sometimes to find certain things to fill the gaps, but we've been doing pretty good with it. And in fact, that is a nice segue into what I can announce today is that tomorrow night, I am planning on doing the second viewing of Matan Evan versus MMA. So we did one round of that. The chat was really enjoying watching Matan. I certainly was. This guy Matan Evan is really funny, and so he's done a couple of interviews with MMA fighters. So we are going to watch the next batch of those. And actually, what I really am looking forward to with that is that Matan was a guest on Dominic Cruz's podcast, where apparently Dominic Cruz kind of got him to drop the guard a little bit, got him to maybe soften his character, got some like real answers out of him as to some of his backstory and stuff like that. So if you are interested in that tomorrow night, I don't have a time for you just yet, but sometime in the evening, I'll try to make it a little bit earlier for some of our people who don't like to be up crazy late at night. But yeah, we will tomorrow night be doing the round 2 of Matan Evan versus MMA.
Yeah, CTE, I'm definitely also clearing my calendar because, well, other than work, of course, but after work, yes, I will be watching the stream with Thinker. It's going to be good. I love it.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, again, other than that, really, it's been trying to find other other combat sports to watch on stream, and that even has been a little bit difficult because it just seems. What I wanted to say about that is that it's crazy to me, knowing that the UFC is gone for a 6-week stretch, that more organizations did not schedule their events during this downtime. You would think that they'd be getting massive amounts of viewership, not having the competition.
Every year is a new year, and we just went through the winter of 2025 and nobody jumped the gun. There wasn't that many bare knuckle events, there wasn't that many one events. Obviously these are the people who don't have to compete too much with the UFC, but just for examples off the top of my head, Karate Combat could have had fucking, they could have had an event, whatever you want to say, but they didn't because they make too much money off crypto apparently.
True. Yes. Well, that's questionable to be sure, but that at least would be the impression that they want you to have.
True. And then Fury
yes.
FC coming this Sunday. Shout out CTE.
Yes. Well, that might actually be something that'll get a watch. Perhaps we'll have to see about that. I'm always constantly checking the schedules and seeing what the next thing up is. So, when something comes up that is worthy and a card that we can actually access, those kinds of things, I'm always kind of trying to find the cards that we can actually find for people, so you can watch easily, and ones that make sense to do on the channel. So as things come up, we will be doing more watch longs and stuff like that as well. And then, of course, the week after next, we will be back with UFC.
Hell yeah. We will be back to staying up till 2 a.m. on Monday nights talking about fights. It's going to be awesome.
Well, yeah, on here, sure, but we won't have to stay up that late for the actual fights themselves anymore, which will be nice, right? The start times are going to be a little bit earlier, so we're going to find out how it all is on Paramount Plus. Many questions are going to be answered soon.
1 hour before isn't too crazy, but the thing that I'll say about that is, did you note that they raised the price?
I did see that today. Yes. I thought that was a ballsy move, considering that we don't know how the broadcast is actually going to look yet. But is it unexpected? Not really. I mean, I think that you could probably have seen it from a mile away if you really were thinking about it.
My thing is, we saw rumors that they were going to change the price, and I'm pretty sure we saw them say that they were going to change the price. So I feel like I've just said that, hey, they're going to change the price, and I feel like we've already went over this a couple times already. So did they officially change the price, or who actually is paying $90 for it? I want to see them pay $90 for it this year for a yearly thing for me to believe that it's changed, kind of deal.
Yeah, I guess we're
because
going to
where
find
we
that
stand, we still got it for 30.
That's,
One third of the price right now. So.
And that's why you were a clairvoyant with that assessment, Chase. Shout out to you for picking up on when it was half price and getting in on it when you did and when I did by extension. So yeah, if you keep your eyes out for the discounts, but we'll see. I mean, I think it's all going to be dependent on how good the actual broadcast looks. Like, what is this? How is this all going to shake out? Because if they have a shit product for people who are on the fence, I mean, because there still might be people who would be like, all right, let me at least just like go sail the 7 seas for the first one just to see how that looks. And if it doesn't look good, be like, well, I'm not paying for that.
I got a big brain to play right here. So Dana White, he hates not streamers, but he hates, the pirates. He hates them with a passion. I wonder, and I think this is very likely, this is my opinion. When negotiating where the UFC was going to go, he wanted to make sure that he had the best option available to get rid of pirating. So he went with probably Paramount, who was, able to look into some sort of solution to the pirating. So maybe once we get into, the first card of Paramount and we realize, oh, pirating is no more, then people are kind of forced into this $90 thing. What if because I know when I try to screen record sometimes, it's just a fucking black screen when it comes out. So what is stopping them from enabling some sort of thing like this where,
they can try, man. Pirates will always find a way. It's the nature of the beast. I guarantee you that there is no stopping when they have, where there's a will, there's a way. You know what I mean?
AI, come on, dude.
AI what? That's it. AI doesn't have the ability to stop it. You cannot stop the train, brother. It rolls on regardless. But we'll see. I mean, maybe there's something that I'm not aware of. At least it'll be a stopgap for a little while. It's like when they had the copy protection on CDs. People figured out a way to like draw little black marks on the edge of the CD to get around that. So I don't know. There's always like I said, where there's a will, there's a way. There's always a way.
The one thing that I'll say about Hydra here, I hate Canada being the only country not getting Paramount Plus. What you also need to pay attention to, you just need to speak around, speak to your peers in the community, because if you knew people in the UK, you would know that they had Paramount Plus. That I mean, they were like not Paramount Plus, but like they had their shit on a streaming service just like what we were going through with Paramount Plus. Like they were kind of like the guinea pigs for the thing, and then we just switched over and used the same shit that they were using. Canada's going to catch up in that sense. You know, you guys will be soon behind. If it's not this year, you know, the contract's up next year. If it's not up next year, it's year after. You know, that's how the shit works. So
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be taken care of. The UFC is not trying to miss out on the Canadian market. That is absolutely true. So
absolutely.
it will catch up in due time, indeed. But we will see. You know, time. We're closing in on it. Getting closer every day, every hour, every minute. We are getting closer to the fights coming back and finding out all. All will be revealed very shortly.
100%.
So, with that said, Chase, I have the questions from the community queued up here. Would you like to go through some of these?
I would like to go through some of them. Yes.
All right, let's do it. Well, starting things off, the question was from you, actually, and you asked, will Thinker get merch in 2026? The answer is, of course, yes. We have met the 1,000 sub goal here, so the merch store is being constructed right now. I know that I had said that I was going to get it out, you know, at that 1,000 sub mark. I did not realize that we were going to hit it as quickly as we did, so really that's a credit to you guys out there for making this happen so rapidly. I was like, oh, you know, I'm going to get it started. I'm getting the designs all put together and everything. I thought I was going to have a little more time to do it, but you guys made this thing happen so overnight that I am now playing catch up. However, trust when I tell you that the designs that I'm coming up with are going to be some that you are going to be like, this was worth the wait. I promise you, I am doing right by the community. As I have always said, I would never put out any merch that I did not feel was worthy of you wearing out in public, stuff that is going to make you look good, that is going to represent you and the channel well. So give it a little bit of time so that I got all of these things in place, and the store will be launching very shortly. So, you know, keep your eyes open. I'm going to make a big announcement, and there might be something very special for all you guys for having to wait a little bit of time.
Hell yeah, you guys deserve it, honestly.
Absolutely. And I cannot wait to let you see some of these things, because like I've been saying, man, we've been putting some real work in behind the scenes to make these things all look cool. So I'm very excited to get the feedback from all of you guys and share all of these things with you.
And then obviously, yes, make sure that you offer international shipping.
Absolutely. Yes. Shipping will be international shipping, I believe, should not be a problem. I'm getting all of those details on the back end sorted as well. So, yes, I will certainly be making sure that that's the case, because we've got so many awesome international fans, which is, you know, just wonderful. We love it.
Hell yeah.
All right. So, that being said, thank you for that. Next up comes from, we've got 3 questions per person for the next couple here. And I think I'm just going to just go in order because they're nicely laid out. So these 3 come from our good friend Rwand, who international fan indeed, and one of the funniest human beings that I know. The first question here is, what was your favorite UFC event in 2025? I like this question.
This one is definitely something that I think we need to talk over, because not many spring off the top of my head. I mean, when I think of the entirety of the event, I think, again, the main event can steal the show a lot. Because when I think of my favorite event, I mean, Dustin and Max kind of had a banger to send off, you know, like that's a pretty crazy one to think about. I don't know if the entirety of the card lives up, but I remember at that point in time for 2025.
Sure. And that's really kind of what I would be getting at as well myself, is that like I remember specific fights more than them as events. I guess some people have a better time like keeping all of an event in their mind. But for me, it's like what made the event great. And it's the standout fights, obviously, standout performances, standout fights. So I did a little minor bit of research just to refresh my memory on some of these. And a couple that I had that stuck out for me was 316 was Marab versus O'Malley 1, I believe. So that was, oh no, that was 2 actually. I had to be 2 because one was the year before at the Sphere. So yeah, that was 2. So there you go. I mean, Marab getting his second win, his submission, you know, of a Marab finish. What a novel concept. That was a good one. 317 was Ilya versus Oliveira. Really kind of I know one that hurts for the Oliveira fans out there, but what a domination by Ilya Topuria, just a further cementing of all what you know about him already, what he's already trying to accomplish and has continuously being accomplishing. Really waiting for Ilya to come back. Actually, a little minor update. We saw that he won his court situation there that I was talking about in the most recent video I did about him. So congratulations to him for that. And hopefully that will get him closer to his comeback. So those being said, those are 2, but then the one that I think is the actual answer for me is UFC 320, which was Alex Pereira versus Ankalaev 2 with Yuri Prochazka and Khalil Roundtree also on that card.
That is definitely the one that I was thinking about in my head. I was thinking, man, Alex, when he came back, I mean, that, that's a crazy win to just talk about. And I was thinking about who was on that card. And yeah, Yuri being on it makes sense. He's on every Alex card. Like, they know what they're doing here. He's on every card with Alex. Like, that's just how it goes. But either way, I love it.
Yeah, he's on the card fighting, and then he's in the crowd weeping man tears for Alex,
Yes. Yeah,
Just,
absolutely.
yeah, fantastic.
I think another one that comes to my head was obviously the more recent one that we just had, the last pay per view of the year. So I think that one was really great with Josh Van taking the belt. I know the main event really wasn't what everybody wanted it to be, but Josh Van got that fucking belt, yo. So
And a solid card otherwise too. So
that's
yeah,
Protest knocked out Leon on that, yes, and then
uh,
Morales knocked out Sean Brady.
yeah, I think that those were on the.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, most definitely. And then people in the chat are saying 314 Volk versus Lopez 1 was another great one. Yeah, that I believe that was the one with Protest and Pico getting knocked out. Or I mean, a Protest knocking out why
Neil.
Neil. Yes, there you go. Exactly. Right. Wasn't that card?
That one sprung off the top of my head. I think it was. That one sprung off the top of my head too as like a banger finale to end it off with. But then I remembered like it was in Australia, right? That card. I remember us looking at the names like, dude, they don't have like any good fighters in Australia apparently. So like maybe that one wasn't like entirely. I think that's weighing down my opinion of what I remember it being because I remember thinking before the card, who are these guys, but the main event definitely a fucking banger. And then if Protest was on that one too, listen, this guy here, he's good, man. Love Protest.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and Patty versus Chandler was on that one as well. Yeah, no, good stuff on that one. Absolutely, good choice, everybody. Yeah, so a couple of good cards. I mean, it's always one of those things where you get some ebb and flow, some ups and downs as far as the quality of the cards go. But really, the takeaway is the fights themselves. So a couple of good ones, and 2025 was a fine year for fighting. I thought,
Hell yeah.
All right, next up, who do you think will headline UFC at the White House?
Wow, that's a really good question. Who is the headliner? Um, do you think? Oh man, let me actually answer before I rebuttal and
Yeah,
ask you a question.
sure.
Off the top of my head, if everything goes right, hopefully, in my opinion, it would be Ilya Taporia.
True. Yeah, and so Ilya fighting who?
Islam,
I
maybe.
mean,
I
that
mean,
would
that's
be the
got to be
mega
what it
fight.
would be, right?
I mean, the fact that fight that they somehow let that fight slip away. I mean, I got to imagine that the organization wanted that fight, and if they didn't make it happen when they had the ability to make it happen, that they were trying to save it for some strategic purpose. So that would make perfect sense. But like that is so much a fight fans fight that like it. I mean, granted, yes, would it be the appropriate fight for a card like that? Absolutely. Is the name value there for both those guys outside of the UFC? I would say that probably yes at this point. I got to imagine that they both have crossed over enough to make it be like, if you don't know, then you should just find out before and like you'll realize why this fight is as big as it is. But that's, I guess, part of the question is like, do they think that there's the name recognition for the average mom and pop who are going to be watching on TV?
I think what would be a funny or a thing to question, right? So Ilya Taporia, right? If he's going to fight at the White House in the main event against Islam Makhachev, this is going to be at 170, yeah? Do you think Ilya, he walked into 55 and got the title shot immediately, it was vacant. Does Ilya get the immediate title shot at 170? Like, is that, does he just jump every weight class and immediately he can challenge whatever title contender he wants, whatever title holder he wants?
I mean, when you are knocking out the greatest fighters in this sport effortlessly, I think the answer is yes, right? I mean, the double champ does what the double champ wants. I mean,
True.
I would think that'd probably be it. That's the question, though. I mean, I would assume, yeah, it has to be at 170, right? I mean, it's Ilya is chasing Islam at this point. Islam being the guy who's in a lot of people's minds doing a little bit of running, a little bit of ducking right now. So, if you like, I love that aspect of Ilya for that. It's like, I don't care what weight you go to, I am going to hunt you down and I'm going to beat you. Now, that being said, Ilya at 170 is a crazy proposition considering his size.
I definitely agree, but I would also like to believe that Ilya has done enough, 2 belts, knocked out Hall of Famers, the greatest of the greats. If his lifelong goal is to just beat Islam Makhachev, and if he actually does it, chase him down, as you would say, through the rankings and through the weight classes, and he actually does it, I mean, that would be that would be pretty sick. Like that would be the coolest thing. I mean, obviously, if he loses, it's like, well, damn, Islam had to fucking run like 3 fucking weight classes away from him, But if Ilya goes up and if the one thing that he does before he retires is I gotta beat Islam. Nobody can beat him, but I know I can. If he goes up and beats him, I mean that dude, he's already the go. But like that feat alone, like even if somebody of not his stature, like if it was his lifelong goal to just beat Islam, at this point beating Islam puts you in a different fucking category. So
True. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, so my answer to this question is I think it's going to be Connor. And I know that that's crazy considering what we know about Connor, what we know about, what the level of fighting that he's probably going to be putting forth is, all of those things. Connor is still the biggest name in the sport to the average person who knows nothing about MMA and UFC. I mean, like he is still to a lot of people the face of this sport. I know that is crazy to us as fans, but I'm telling you, if you go into the supermarket and you ask them who is the MMA fighter that you can name, a lot of the grandmothers amongst them are only going to be able to name Conor McGregor.
So I ponder the question, obviously they're doing some strategic, maneuvering to try to get who they want at the White House. Do you think that they knew that the White House was a possibility back last year when Conor McGregor pulled out and they were just, we don't want to waste this return, but we
Nah.
know it's going to be at the White House and we know that's possible coming. So just hold off.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I highly doubt it. But you do make a good point that it's like you've had. I mean, because I see Lachlan in the chat asking, like, what's the chances of him actually making the fight? And it's like for the White House, I think that anybody is going to make that fight. John Jones would make that fight if they want him to be on it. But like, it's the fact that it's even a question is because of all of that history, and that makes it a little bit of an up in the air thing, regardless.
The reason I think that you might be incorrect is because from what history has shown us, now if you have seen on Netflix the Conor McGregor Forever documentary, which added to the list by the way, we should definitely rehash and watch that.
Yeah.
There is a part where this was, during COVID, Conor was talking about coming back right at the end of like before COVID started, I think Conor was talking about making a comeback. And in the documentary COVID happened and then they were going to like the Fight Island or whatever, and then he goes against Donald Cerrone. They didn't care that it was they just have Connor in the Apex or whatever the fuck it was. Like, it wasn't like they maneuvered him to where like, oh no, we can't have you fight in the Apex, dude. Like, no way. Like, obviously you want to be active or whatever, but like they didn't have like some bigger plan for him. Like they didn't really care to bring him back before the shit happened. And then when the shit happened, they were just like, yeah, you can fight. I don't care. It's not like they had big plans because Conor McGregor holds value. I mean, he did at one point, and maybe at that time he still did, but I think if he was going to, if what I'm saying would be true, that they would hold on to him, obviously not as long as I'm making it seem back last year, but if they were to hold on to him for the White House, I think back then during COVID or something, they probably would have had a bigger plan for him. Like, we don't need you to fight Cerrone for nothing, kind of deal.
Perhaps. I mean, there could be some behind the scenes stuff that I'm not taking into consideration, but really, I think that the biggest thing for the White House card is regardless of if you are Connor or the first fighter on the card who may or may not be a superstar, I bet that the organization is sitting them down and placing a firearm to their forehead and saying that if you pull out of this card, you are going to be assassinated. You will be annihilated. You will never fight again, and you will probably never see your loved ones again.
Yeah, but look at this most recent comment. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. Yep, that's facts though.
These
Yeah.
are facts. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but he's saved now. Connor is saved. Connor
And
wants
married.
he's saved. He's married. He wants to build the largest statue of Jesus in the history of the planet in Ireland. That is
I
a real thing that he said.
I thought I really cooked when I said it. Like, he really is trying to steal the Brazilians' statue idea. Like, they have that already, don't they? Like,
They
geez,
do.
he did Baldo in 12 seconds and said, I need a 12-ton statue of Jesus Christ, just like he had, Like, it's weird.
I mean, these are the rivalries that last forever. That's why he's still going after Habib to this very day.
When aliens find these big ass statues, they're gonna be like, damn, these people were huge. You guys see what they did? Like, they built that statue of that guy, and then there's gonna be nothing left but there's gonna be two, on the planet. Like,
True. Yeah. I mean, this Jesus guy must have been pretty cool. So
Right.
they're thinking out there in space, I guess. But yeah, so I mean, I guess that's the final answer for me right now is that strictly off of name value alone, I think that would be my reasoning there. Who he's going to fight, I guess, is really still up in the air. And there's a couple of names that come to mind as who would be appropriate, but I do think that one half of it probably will be Conor McGregor, just because again, he is still to many people the face of MMA.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. Okay.
All right. So the next question is still from Rwand, and he asks, of course, Rwand, the fraud check king. He says, "Who do you think will be the biggest fraud check in 2026?"
Oh shit. That is a good one. Who is going to get fraud checked in 2026? Movsar Evelev.
Ooh, I love that choice. That is a really, really good one, man. Yeah, Movsar, who's been sitting strategically, waiting, getting a couple of wins, and then saying, I'm content. I'll hang out." Movsar, who fought maybe at the beginning of the year, and that was it, if that, or did he fight at all last year?
He fought Aljo.
He did fight Aljo. I think that might have been early in
No,
the year. Yeah.
no, maybe that was the year before. Maybe I'm like, because Aljo fought Brian Ortega.
The fact that you have to think about it in those terms says all that you need to know about it. I like that as an answer. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a huge fraud check because of like the status that this person has, but one who comes to mind for me, actually, Hydra beat me to the point. Bisanger Susurkayev is my choice for somebody who is getting brutally fraud checked in 2026. I think that this guy, he is way too cocky for what he has put forth in fights. I think that he is too slow to the draw. He is a person who allows the fight to unfold too much before he actually starts turning up himself. And there is going to be a fighter who's going to capitalize on that early inactivity in a big way.
I want you to hear me out on this one. I know it's a little too early to say that it is a fraud check, but obviously this person has built a little hype behind themselves. And it's interesting to note that they're fighting. So the person that I'm talking about is Josh Hokett. Now, Josh Hokett, he's fighting Denzel Freeman next. Now, everybody laughs because that dude put on one of the worst performances you've ever seen, right? And he also looks like the cop from Family Matters or whatever the hell it is. He also has a submission win over your favorite prospect heavyweight as of right now, which is Stephen Concrete Asplin. So if Josh Hokett, now granted, he is a wrestler, if Josh Hokett is able to somehow manage to lose to Denzel Freeman, I would say that is one of the biggest fraud checks of 2026 as it stands.
Well, I mean, with the amount of talking that guy does, him being another WWE style talker, following in the well-worn clown shoes of Colby Covington with that. I think that you're absolutely right. It would be because, I mean, you can't. This is the problem when you build yourself up in that way. It's the same problem that Colby ran into himself. You build yourself up with this over-the-top verbose trash talking. Your downfall is A, very sweet to the people who hate you, and B, it taints your image overall because you can't live up to the you can't just talk about it. You have to be about it, and if you don't live up to it, you're not being about it.
Hell yeah.
So those, I think that those are some pretty good options. Oh, Gable Stevenson coming in as an option. He's not in the UFC yet, but it would be interesting if he comes into the UFC and immediately loses. I'd say that's a somewhat of a fraud check. No,
I mean, it's not even if he comes into the UFC and loses. Obviously, if he loses before he gets to the UFC, that would be pretty crazy. But John Jones is going to make this dude's loss so much better. This dude says he's going to turn Gable Stevenson like he's fucking Master Yoda and this is Luke Skywalker. He's going to turn him into 3 times the champ Daniel Cormier was. Now, listen, John Jones is one of these guys who he's obsessive about greatness. He knows what greatness means. Like, he knows how great somebody is because he knows he's greater than them. He's greater than DC. He's the reason that DC is not the greatest at light heavyweight and heavyweight, whatever you want to say. But he said confidently, Gable Stevenson will be 3 times the champ. I know it's a hyperbole, but dude, what drugs were you on right there? Gabe, whatever it is, dude. Gable, his name is Gable.
Gable.
Okay.
I like the name.
Anyway, he's done. He's done, bro. He's not going to be no heavyweight champ as of what I'm saying right now. I mean, dude, you knocked out slobs. I mean, Stephen Asplin's going to have something to say about it before anything. That's all I'm saying.
True. All right. Well, then I have one question that I will add to this conversation, and this is one that I don't think anybody wants, but I will ask it as a purely hypothetical question. If Carlos Prates gets brutally knocked out, would you consider that a fraud check?
No, no,
Not off of what he's already done, right?
no. I mean, even if you get, listen, not getting, he's not a fraud. I mean,
Right.
he's proven, he's lost before and he's lost to good talent. Now, if he gets smoked by somebody that's like not a knockout artist, like it's not a fraud check, but it's definitely like concerning. Like, damn, you got knocked out by fucking that guy. Like, but he's fine. No, that's definitely no fraud check. No fraud check. Mm.
Well, I see. I appreciate the way that you phrased that, Chase, and you teed me up perfectly. This is why I don't like the term fraud check to begin with. None of these guys are frauds necessarily. I mean, some of these guys are earlier on, maybe over. Like Hokit, I think, is one that is a good example of somebody who maybe has a little bit of a claim to a fraud check if, like, because of how big he is talking. But all of these guys that we're talking about, even Stevenson, really, I mean, like, he's been out there winning his fights. Now, granted, the talent level might not be there to justify it just yet, but it doesn't matter. Like, none of these guys are out here, like, pretending to be something that they're not. If they're winning their fights, they are not frauds. That is why I don't like the term fraud check to begin with. I never personally use it. I am only using it in this context.
Nah, if Gautier goes up against somebody that's not even ranked or whatever and just gets chinned somehow, that might be a fraud check. That
But
might be
how do
pretty
you?
bad.
But then how do you take away the other knockouts though? You know what I mean? Like he's already done the
Specifically for
work.
that, specifically for him though, it's just like people on short notice from different weight classes. Like if it's somebody like that where you could just be like, yeah, people were scared to go in there with him and they were getting chinned, yeah, but like once somebody actually, was able to dodge and evade and actually check him one time, he falter. I don't know. That's just an example. There's people who they seem, I'll give you fraud check of 2025. Hyder Emil. That guy got fucking fraud checked bad. He came in here and was actually looking like one of the more talented people and then gets knocked out by Jose Delgado, of course. And then we're thinking like, okay, that's just some guy. But then his most recent performance, it's like, what were we even thinking? So for 2026, another one for a fraud check potentially. And this is outside of the UFC, but I've been waiting for this to happen, and it's gonna happen one of these times, guys. Dakota Decheva.
I knew it.
What are we
Yeah.
going for here, guys?
Yeah, no, I mean, again, the good wins outside the UFC, can she replicate inside the UFC will be the question there. If she does lose outside the UFC, I guess that does taint the perception a little bit. But I mean, I understand where you're coming from with all of this, and I do think you're making a good case, like with the Ateba Gautier. But like, it's just to me, it's like if you go now, granted, you're right. I mean, a Treston Vine's not necessarily the greatest competitor for it, but like if you go in there and you make it look effortless, then I think that there is something to be said for that by itself. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little bit too nice to some of these competitors, but I think what they do is, insanely impressive, regardless of the level of competition. Dakota Ditcheva as well.
Factual.
So, all right. Well, that being said, let's move on to the questions that came in from the good homie who is in the chat right now, Mr. Hydra. He says, "What is the most memorable fight that you have ever watched?"
Ooh, I have talked about this before, and it's a random one. It is from the Contender Series. It is Danny Silva versus Angel Pacheco. And I will tell you, this is one of these fights where you have genuinely Angel Pacheco. We just saw him get fight news, and I think it's genuinely hilarious because he's 100% a punching bag. Like when you think of Brian Ortega, he at least has grappling. Angel Pacheco is a striker, and he is not very good at it. He gets beat to a pulp, and I think what is interesting about this fight, it is so memorable to me because Danny Silva beat him to hell for 3 rounds, never lost a step. The volume, it was Josh Van-esque. Like, how do you continue to strike for 3 rounds against somebody who just will not die? And he obviously beat the hell out of him. This dude, Angel Pacheco's ear was hanging off of his, like, it was busted and bleeding and, like, ripped. And by the end of the fight, like, he didn't win, obviously. And Dana was very adamant. This was one of the first times that I saw Dana give a contract to both the winner and the loser. He walked backstage personally, back when, this year we saw Dana get in the cage, and he was like, that was the best fucking goddamn fight I've ever seen. He had never done that before, but before that, he had walked backstage and shook Angel Pacheco's hand and said, you are a hell of a fighter. I don't know why you're crying, kid. You're going to get into the UFC. Like, you're coming, and it was crazy. Like, again, it's so memorable to me because Angel Pacheco for 3 rounds lost a fight. Maybe he probably had a good moment or two. I don't know. Obviously, he was getting beat up. And at the end of the fight, he was crying because he thought that his dream was over. Like, he thought that he's never going to make the UFC. This was his one opportunity to make an impression. Impression made right here. That's why he went into the UFC. And Dana, he knows ball, man. He went right. I'm telling you, walked backstage, shook his hand, and he's like, dude, you're good. Like, you're coming to the UFC, man. And Angels, I mean, like, even hearing that, he did not want to know that because he wanted to win the fight, bro. He wanted to go out there and win. You know, it was just that fight right there. I'm telling you, awesome, memorable.
Excellent. There you go. Yeah, and one that obviously was a big, formidable memory for you starting out as becoming the fan that you are today. So that makes perfect sense. Um, so for me, there's a couple, obviously. Like one that sticks out to me that was my favorite fight for the longest time was Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler 2. That was one of the greatest fights of all time, and a fight that always will stick with me as did we lose Chase? Yeah, we lost Chase for a second there. He was starting to break up. Well, while we wait for Chase to return to us here, Rory Mack versus Robbie Lawler 2, one of the greatest fights of all time, if not the greatest fight to me for the longest time. But then now Lachlan kind of stealing the thunder a little bit, but the answer is absolutely the truth. Has to be Holloway versus Gaethje for the BMF belt at 300. I mean, that is, here's Chase. Get Chase back in here. There he is. Hey, Chase, you back with us?
Stop talking. Yeah, so I at least feel. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I was just starting it off. So I had said that Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2 was one, and then I had just gotten into Holloway versus Gaethje at 300 for the BMF belt being probably the one that sticks out the most. I mean, it's a little bit more recent than a lot of fights, and I've seen so many fights that it's like, I'm sure that there are a million amazing fights that I could go back and pick out the ones, but I mean, Holloway versus Gaethje has to be like my favorite. I mean, you get such a quality fight throughout all of it, and then obviously the last 10 seconds, definitely one of the most memorable fight experiences I've ever had. One of the biggest pops that I've ever had on stream before too. So there's definitely that. An honorable mention would probably go to Brian Ortega versus Alexander Volkanovski. That was one that, Volk surviving a guillotine that looked like it was about to pop his head off. That was just one that sticks out in my mind, is very memorable. That's one that I have a good memory of watching with Vitz King. And that was the fight that got Vitz King. So, to be such a big Volkanovski fan. So that's definitely one of them as well. I mean, and then I guess really, if we want to go back to my very earliest portions of the sport, Chris Weidman versus Anderson Silva is very memorable to me because that was the first like full time that I sat down to watch an event. And of course, seeing Anderson Silva, who I had heard about being this, the world-class caliber fighter, one of the greatest fighters of all time, this and that, to get caught by Chris Weidman, who was a relative nobody at the time, was obviously something that sticks out in my mind. Like, wow, that's crazy that happened. So yeah, those are a couple of them that definitely are like standouts. And, I mean, again, I can probably pick out a million of them if I really wanted to sit down, but I would say if I had to take one answer away, it's got to be Holloway versus Gaethje. It's one of the best fights of all time, if not the best.
One last one that I will say that it didn't get me into the sport, but it is one that I will never forget, and I just will always praise the build up, the action, everything. If you look at Alex and Yuri 2, this is one of the most dominant performances that you've seen from Alex, of course. You see it against somebody who is so good in Yuri, of course. Again, this is somebody at the prime of his career. Yuri is so fucking good at this time, and he's still right in the title picture. And Alex, fluky knockout on the first one, fine, run it back. This one, Alex makes it so definitive that he is the champion of the world. He knocks Yuri unconscious with a switch kick that sends Yuri into the shadow realm. But the thing about this matchup that is so unforgettable is Yuri was saying that Alex uses voodoo before the fight, and then Alex genuinely looked like he used fucking voodoo magic to beat Yuri Prohaska in the cage. And you know why I say that is because nobody does that to Yuri. There's only two people that can do that to Yuri, and it's Alex twice. Like, it's crazy. So
Absolutely. No, I think good choice there. I mean, yeah, and so many of Yuri's fights are in that same realm of just, memorable is beyond the, an understatement. I mean, you watch the guy fight, it's just, it's like you get that that good feeling inside, like as a fight fan, it's just like, man, I just love watching this dude fight. So
yeah,
yeah, Yuri getting a shout out is absolutely warranted there.
hell yeah.
All right. So next up is, who was the first fighter that you hated? Hate, kind of a
Hmm.
strong word.
The first fighter that I disliked potentially, allegedly.
Hate, but we're talking hatred.
Oh, gosh, this is a really probably Islam, because
Really?
and I really like Islam now. That's the crazy part. But the one of the first encounters that I had with him, not the first, but one of the first. I mean, I watched him rob Volkanovski because I remember. Listen, here's the context. I remember watching Volk and Islam, and I said, Volk won. How are you guys seeing different? And then people argued. They're like, no, if you watch it, like Islam did this. He had his back in the first. He did this in the second. He did this, and I'm like, I still watch it with the visuals and the understanding that Islam wins these rounds, but my eyes still don't believe it. Like I'm watching the fight, and dude, Volkanovski fucking beat Islam. Like it's crazy. Like he should be the double champ. He should have been the last person to hold two simultaneous belts before they switched the shit. But they didn't let that happen. And then the next fight they line it up, and he fucking decapitates him with a fucking head kick, of course. And it's like the whole world, like my whole idea that Volk rightfully beat him, it doesn't even matter because he just annihilates him in the first round.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that when we're talking about the hatred, though, I mean, you're making valid points about like the fighting itself, but like that doesn't really play into him as a person, I guess.
I
But
mean,
like,
I don't. Do we really want to hate these guys as a person? I
no,
mean,
yeah. I
I
mean,
hate Colby Covington, I
well,
guess,
that's
but
what,
like
yeah,
that
that's
guy,
going to be my
sure.
answer, honestly, is that, yeah, I mean, Colby was the first fighter that I actually had like a legitimate like dislike for, because I've always hated his shtick. I've always thought that it was phony as a $2 bill. I mean, like I saw right through all of what Colby was doing very early on in his career of doing it. And I've never liked it. I never thought that it was effective, and I never understood why people were feeding into it. So Colby is definitely number one. And of course, they're right behind him has to be John Jones. I mean, if you listen to this channel and have seen my videos, you know my feelings on John Jones, and that's a legitimate dislike for that person.
I was gonna say, there was a time where I did not get along with Brendan Allen. I would say there was a little bit of unwarranted hatred, but he has worked and he has earned my respect, and then I'm very grateful to be probably his number one fan at this point.
There you go. So see, I guess the people that you hate can turn you into a fan, and that's a good quality of you. You're
Oh, Bo
malleable.
Nickel. Sorry, hate Bo Nickel.
Damn, you hate Bo?
Yeah. But no, he's cool
Oh,
now. He got that knockout. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought about that. Like, ah, man, he does kind of suck. Oh,
eh.
yeah, RDR sucks too, man. God, there's a lot of people that I could just randomly hate, to be fair.
But
But
I mean, it's like it's different between hating on and actually hating them, though. You know what I mean? Like,
true.
I think that there's like that's why I pick like a John Jones as a person who I think deserves a legitimate hatred to me.
Well, see, but I could say something like, dude, like I hate Corey Sandhagen. Like I don't believe in the idea that people think that he could win high level fights anymore. Like I gave him a title fight, and we knew he was going to lose. He almost got knocked out by Marab, and people will still try to tell me that he's got it. Like, no, I hate that guy for that reason. And then he gets on YouTube, and then he wants to put out all these fucking fighting tutorials, like he's fucking Bruce Lee and shit. Like, dude, you aren't even winning your own encounters. How are you teaching me here? Like, I don't know, but either way.
I think you have a decent little point there. I also, for whatever reason, random facts get stuck in your mind. I always remember that you at one point said that you hated Miles Johns.
Miles John, yeah. Well, because he beat Dan Argueta, and I don't believe he did. And I think there was and he's kind of boring. Why is and he just lost to fucking Barcelos. Like, dude, how are you losing to this old man? You are letting Ronnie Barcelos, stay underrated because he beat somebody that doesn't matter so much. Like, it's just crazy.
True. I think I had a minor amount of hatred for Patty after the Jared Gordon incident, and this recent spat of situation between Patty and Dan Hooker probably plays a little bit of into how I feel about him now. I would say, it's like Patty is a dude who has like come back from that perception and then just like puts himself back into it, similar to Ian Gary. I mean, I've never actually like hated Ian Gary. I've kind of always just laughed at Ian Gary, but I do know people who have, you know, like legitimate hatred for that guy, and I can understand why they do, for to an extent, because I do think Ian Gary talks a little bit bigger of a game than he actually delivers at times.
You definitely, you know, Armin is on the list, of course.
Oh, Armin, there you go. That's another one. Yeah, for sure. There's a legitimate hatred for me. Yeah,
Yeah,
good call.
I'm trying to think of some other one. No, I wouldn't say. I was gonna say no. I don't hate Manel Cap. No, he's cool. He's fine.
Nah, I mean, like there are things I don't like about Manel Cab. I definitely think that he is a loose cannon, but he's a genuine loose cannon. So at least it's not a false front that he's putting on. You know what you're getting out of him.
True. That's, you know, there are, you know, people, they respect the truth, you know, and he will give you the truth. So
Yeah, absolutely. Authenticity. We talk about that regularly.
100%. Yeah.
So those are some options for that. All right, and next up, also from Hydra, which fighter do you want to meet the most?
Um, I'm not a big fan of meeting your heroes. But I would say I would have liked to meet Josh Van at one point. Like that would have been cool if, because like he used to go on his interviews and be like, you know, I always Google myself. You know, I always look at the videos of people that are talking about me. So I'm very confident that he's seen videos of me, or you know, has been aware that I've, you know, been supporting him. But I've seen him on plenty of other YouTubers. Think it would have been cool if we could have collabed. But now at this point, it's like we ain't bros like that, I guess, you know. So it's cool, Josh. I get it. I'm still supporting you, but like bedtime MMA, he ain't as cool as me, dude. You know, like we could have collabed. You could have been right here. You know, we could have been chilling. But either way, you know, at this point, no, I don't think there's a current. I mean, again, a lot of these people don't speak the same language as me, you know, so that's a funny thing. Like, who would you like to meet? I'd love to meet Miktebek Orabai. You know, that'd be awesome to have a fucking dinner date with that guy, you know?
Hell yeah, dude. I've got two. Now, see, you know, I'm also in the same camp. Like, I don't have, obviously, I cover MMA, so you'd think that I'd have more of an interest in. Yeah, so you wanted to.
Alice Ardoyan. I'll meet her.
Well, that was going to be the other thing I was going to say. There's just several female fighters I would certainly like to meet. But yeah, I mean, covering MMA, you'd think that I'd have more of an interest in actually like engaging with the fighters. I personally like to keep some distance between myself and the fighters. I think that it makes the coverage of the sport better. Like, you know, it's more objective. You don't let personal biases like override like the reality of anything with that. And I don't have, I don't know, like I just don't have like any like grand desire to like be like on a constant basis interacting with the people in the sport, even though this is the most accessible sport to the athletes. So that being said, like if we're just strictly going off of like who would I like to have a beer with, there are two that come to mind. One is Yuri Prohashka. I think
that's fucking Hydra, man. Yes,
Yuri Prohashka. Yeah, I, you know, maybe not inside the hotel room, but being amongst him and his crazy guys from his village, I think that sounds like fun. I mean, like, you know, it doesn't, you know, out in public, in a nice public setting where no crazy things can happen necessarily, but he's a cool guy. He seems like a very genuine guy. I would definitely like to hang out with him. And the other one that I think is, I think, a great choice, Chris Duncan. I actually think he seems like a really genuine dude. Obviously a tough guy in the cage, seems like a nice enough guy outside of the cage, and his story is crazy. So like he seems like the kind of guy that you could not only have like a laugh with, but also like a serious conversation with.
Yeah, I actually kind of respect that one right there. You know, shout out you, because Chris Duncan is a kind of sleeper pick of somebody that, you know, would be able to be down to earth. Like he does seem just like a normal dude, you know. Let me think one more person that I think I would like to meet. That would be really cool. You know, what would we even talk about? I don't know. Like, how would I come across this meeting? Do I just want to go out and have like a burger with these guys? Do I want to say what's up? You know, if I saw Jose Delgado on the street, of course, I'd be like, you're going to be the next. You're going to be the next, man. You're already the next. You know, I'd like that. I respect that.
Sure. And actually, I do want to highlight CTE saying that Robert Whitaker, that's another great choice. Absolutely. I was going to say also Max Holloway is probably one that seems like Max a cool guy, cool. You know, like it's always what I like in fighters in general. What's up?
Tony Ferguson. I'll take it.
Fuck no, dude. Hell no. I'm all right on that, dude. Yeah.
Dude, come on. We would have a hell of a time.
Yeah, it's some, you know, I guess it depends on how crazy you want your night to get, you know?
Cooking with Volk is a really good option there too. You can just get on
True.
the show. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, Volk would be another one. You know, it's that's the thing. It's like it goes back to the type of fighters that I like. I like guys who are not huge trash talkers, who have a good personality, but like are not crazy going after their opponents, and then they get in the cage and fight their hearts out. That's
You
it carries over into the type of person they are.
you wouldn't want to meet Nate Diaz, dude? Come on, like.
Fuck no, dude. And do what? I mean, the guy can barely string a sentence together.
Oh, well, that was gonna be the funniest thing. Is I was gonna say before that, I was like, it'd be funny. You say Stipe, you can't even hear, you don't even know what he's saying half the time. It's the same thing with Mictebek. It's like you guys just speak two different languages.
Hanging out with Boomhauer, yeah. And then as far as female fighters go, it would be Mackenzie Dern and my lady friend Shauna Bannon.
Well, good picks, obviously, but we actually failed to mention this at the beginning of the show. But since Mackenzie Dern did come up, we should mention that at the Golden Globes, we had, which is funny because the UFC clearly picked the two that they would have at this. These are your Hollywood looking esque
Right,
guys.
yeah.
You have Brian Ortega, and then you have Mackenzie Dern, and then you have some. And a lot of people have been saying it's weird and dumb, and it is weird, and it was a interesting way to cross promote. The way that they set it up, I don't know if you watched the video clip or how they set it up when they walked out.
No, I didn't. I saw that they were there. I didn't see the clip though.
Oh, okay. So they basically, they're like about to introduce a nominee. Like they're about to introduce the next topic. And they're like, all right, before we get into best video nominee, we have some security backup that we want to introduce. And then Brian Ortega and Mackenzie Dern walk out and then they like pose. And then they're in their fight uniform now. Like they have like
They're in their kit.
Yeah, but they had like the jackets and stuff. Mackenzie Dern had the belt with her, and like they posed for a second, and then they, walk out, kind of like a runway type of thing, and then that's it. That's all that it was. It was interesting. Let's see if chat knows what I'm talking about.
I'm sure that they do. I what I said about this in the Discord was that it's amazing that they got the two most okayest fighters in the UFC to go and represent our sport on the big stage.
It's just the two that potentially looked the most normal, I guess. Is like if you sent, like, look, it should have sent Paulo Costa out there. Like exactly, you can't send that guy out there. I mean, obviously
Right.
he looks the part, but he'd have to be shirtless and he'd have to go out there and say secret juice 3 times. So.
Yeah. No, it was it's exactly what you said. I mean, you got two people who fit the part as far as the aesthetics go, so it makes sense why it was them. But it is funny in fight terms that it was them.
Yeah, and absolutely. Why did they dress Dern in fight gear and not a nice dress? Guys, she was in a dress.
They did, yeah. She was.
She was in a dress, but then they switched her to the fight gear. That's the funniest part. Like, I don't know.
She had a costume change.
Yeah, and it was for a 2-second bit. Like it was literally 2 seconds. They walked out, did a runway thing, and just walked back out. So people were very rightfully confused.
Yeah, they're trying to put MMA and UFC into more things. I mean, this cross promotion with Paramount makes perfect sense for all of that. So the same reason we had a couple fighters at some other runway thing. I remember Carlos Prates was at an award show not too long ago with some female fighter. So yeah, I mean, I guess just be aware that this is going to happen more and more as they try to make this sport a little bit more mainstream.
Some people go to the runway events. Some people come from the runway events. Shout out Islam Dulatov, my guy.
Absolutely. Indeed. All right. Well, next up on the questions here, this one comes in. These three, I guess, come in from Blue.
Wait, I'm sorry. We got to get to this. We got to get to some comments here. I didn't even see them. Meeting Nate Diaz in person would make me quit smoking weed. That was pretty good. Shauna Bannon, the worst fighter currently on the roster. You've never seen Sakara. So come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely that. And worst fighter on the roster currently, but what that asks about, though.
Yeah. Brian Ortega humiliation ritual. That one's a pretty good one too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think that is, because what was humiliating about it though, just the fact that he's like not that great and he's out there representing the sport. I mean, I don't think that he would think that it was humiliating. He certainly didn't have to get naked like John Cena.
True.
So any which way. All right. Well, let's get to the next question here. This is from Bloomis, and he asks, if you could change one rule or judging criteria in MMA tomorrow, what would it be?
All right. I'm going to go ahead and side with my favorite UFC analyst, Joe Rogan. I think the fight should never end until we see a finish. No, don't stand them up. Don't do anything. No, don't even have a fucking ref in there. Don't just let them fight. You know, when the fight's over, we'll know. We'll know as fans. We'll see who the victor is at the end. That is my hot take of 2026. Just blood ritual of a fight. There you go. Shout out
Jesus.
Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan. Shout out.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, point for brutality, I suppose. But I think that in practice, you would find that to be very, very bad.
No,
Like,
it'd be boring. They'd just
yeah.
stall the entire time. One of them would just quit eventually.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it'd be long as fuck. I mean, they actually had fights like that at one point back, I believe in Pride, I want to say, or like somewhere in the Pride era. Like they had like, or I think it might even have been before Pride, like a pre-Pride thing, that where it was like it was just fight until the end, and it turned out exactly as we were describing. Not great. But fair enough if that's your choice. My choice, being that I have been watching more universal rule set, I gotta say knees to the downed opponent at this point. I've come around to it in a big way, and seeing it in action, especially on the Ryzen card that we watched on New Year's Eve, it really does add another great level to the sport. It's you could say that the brutality of it is a little bit harsh, but I think that that's really just on initial watching of it. Like once you like if you come from not seeing it and then see it for the first time, it's a little bit jarring, but like as you see it actually being enacted, I think it makes perfect sense. It takes care of a lot of the stalling that fighters want to do when they go for level changes and like clinching up against against the cage. Like a lot of positions that would normally be inactive positions can become a lot more active if you allow the knees to the downed opponent.
Yeah, I'm trying to still think. What would mine actually be? I don't know. Joe Rogan, I think he has a funny point to his madness. I mean, it's not, it starts out decently, like, oh, don't stand them up. If they can't get up, that's part of the fucking thing, fine. But, if the fight never ends because they never get up, that's absolutely horrible. But obviously we could pick to do something with eye pokes, if there could be a point deduction when it comes to that. But I don't think that solves the eye poke issue. What would be, I don't know. I think what rules? I think we should. Oh, I actually said this before. Here's my hot take, and I'll bring it back up because I think it's really good. Each official judge, before the match starts, write me a mission statement of how you want the fighter to win the fight. Tell me what wins the fight to them. And then I know when I'm watching the fight what the judge is looking for. That's how I know to gamble better, is because if that dude is looking for wrestling and that dude's looking for striking, well, let me adjust my calculations here before I start making my plays. I need to know which one of you is going to screw me over because you're wanting fucking wall install and you think knees to the thigh is actually very controlling and shit. I don't know.
Well, I think that tips the hand a little bit too much, but I will modify that to one that I think you had said also that I think is more applicable, that I do like, is I liked what you had said about judges justifying their decisions after a fight. Like, tell me what, if not before the fight, then after the fight, a little segment, even if it's something that comes out the day after where they have to like do a little, a small couple sentences where it's just, this is why I thought this person won the fight. Give me an explanation, because based on what we see when we see all of these terrible decisions from these judges, at least having some accountability for your thought process, at least, because there's not, if we're not going to have actual accountability for the decisions themselves, then at least be accountable for what made you draw that conclusion and try to make it as believable as possible based on the fact that we are speculating on some fixes being in and stuff like that at Cash Patel.
100%. Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. I'm glad I said that a while ago.
Indeed. See, these are the things that I remember when they are of value, I believe.
Absolutely.
All right, so those were good. Next question up is, do you think MMA fighters rely too much on athleticism and not enough on technical efficiency?
No, I think it's absolutely the other way around right now. I mean, when you get to the heavyweights, obviously they rely on just, the one knockout power, but when it comes to what I've said about the modern era of mixed martial arts, I mean, it comes with a lot of sports. I mean, the evolution of the game gets better. Everybody can do more as time goes on. I think we are in the most skilled era of mixed martial arts. I don't think these guys rely on athleticism too much now. I think it is definitely the cherry on top, because when you have somebody who's uber athletic and they are able to be skillful, technical, and they have these attributes, like Michael Morales, he gets by with a lot of athleticism, but it ain't just because he's athletic. He has a lot of different technical abilities that make sure that the athleticism is just it's just cherry on top. Like I said, when you have somebody who's not as athletic, I mean, they obviously have the skill set. They know their deficiencies. That's what I think is cool about mixed martial arts. Like, you have people who know that they're like a blubbering buffoon, like Jose Medina. He know, like, obviously he came in with a six pack, but he's still like just a chubby guy at heart. Like, he just goes in there and he don't really give a shit, But like, you get the vibe. I don't You get the vibe that he knows how to fight rather than he's just there to look cool. I don't think the athleticism or looking the part is really what we're seeing. I think the technical ability is actually what we should be highlighting, because I think we see a lot of it, especially outside of the heavyweight. Any other weight class, it's amazing technical abilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're really on point with all of that. What you said, I mean, we're in the most the greatest era of MMA. I mean, we were always in the greatest era of MMA
Yeah.
as we progress into the future. I mean, the sport has leaps and bounds improved over the abilities of the golden era of the sport and before that, and continues to improve. Just fight over fight with these guys. Like, they're getting better every day. The fact that we now are in an era where fighters are specifically training for MMA, and it is their entire job is to train and get better, like, the level of athleticism and technicality raised together. So I don't think that, I mean, you can probably point out specific fighters who that's applicable to. This guy is more of a slugger than this guy, or this guy is relies a little bit too much on being fast. Someone maybe like I don't think that this is the case, but if you wanted to try to make an argument, someone like an MVP, you might be able to say, oh, well, he's more crafty with his movement than he is about his like actual technical striking. But I wouldn't apply that. I don't think that that's actually accurate. So, like I said, there's an argument maybe for someone to make, but I don't necessarily ascribe to that. I just think that, yeah, we're always going to be in the best era, no matter like how far we get down the road, because it's just getting better and better all the time.
And then there are unique cases that we have. And like I said, outside of the heavyweight, those things aren't true in my opinion. But when you get into the heavyweight, you do get the rare case where it is not about athleticism, nor is it about technical ability. When you have Chris Barnett in the cage, he has neither of those. None at the zero athleticism on the bar, on the skill points or whatever. And technical ability, I mean, I've seen it in clips, but against Hamdi, no, it wasn't there. So that would just be my point. Yeah. I don't know. I'd see outside of the heavyweight, I think, athleticism, it's a cherry on top.
Yeah, and we're seeing more of that, more well-rounded fighters in heavyweight, or we're trying to anyway. We've been saying for a while now, the organization is making a concerted effort to improve the heavyweight division based on bringing in guys with more diverse skill sets. You can't tell me that Walter Walker getting these heel hooks is not technically sound and savvy. I mean, like, that's, it's an example right there. So what I'm saying, like, when you bring up a Chris Barnett, you're always going to be able to pick out specific fighters that don't fit the exact mold of what we're talking about. But really, the more that we get down the line, the more those become outliers. And that just speaks to the tide rising all ships.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, there you go. And I guess then this is the last question of the night. Here is also from Bloomis, and he asks, how much should near submissions count if they don't lead to a finish? I love this question.
What I actually think that's a really good question, because I've actually said this before, what is a body shot? If somebody hurts somebody with a body shot, it doesn't count as a knockdown. It doesn't actually tally anything other than a total strike or a significant. The judges might optically, take note of that, but when they look at the scoring sheet, at the end of the round, and they're trying to base their opinions on what they're, formulating here, there's nothing that actually shows that, like, oh yeah, he did a damaging body shot on the actual score. Now, when you go to submissions, you get submission attempts, yes, but knowing that the submission was like locked in, like close, like, I mean, that does mean something, but oftentimes it goes unrelated. How many times I've seen Kevin Holland in tight submissions, and now granted, it didn't matter at the end of the day, but at the time, I had never seen anybody escape like he had done, so like, it's pretty crazy to me that it really doesn't, it doesn't account for either one of them. The person escaping should get a +1, because like, damn, they kind of got out of a team, but then also the person doing the sub, that's a +1. I know it obviously should, it'll counter out but maybe the other dude just loses his grip and lets it go. I don't know how the hell it's going to work, but I think submission attempts that are very, very close, that you're like aching as the fucking audience for them to give up, that should be a plus to somebody in the equation.
Right. And see, this goes back to the fact that no matter what, at the end of the round, based on the 10-point must system, it's going to either be one fighter getting the 10 points or the other fighter not getting the 10 points. So it's like, really, I kind of going back to the earlier question about what would you change in the officiating or the judging of the sport, just better informing with the judging in general. I mean, that, it's like, how do you quantify that? But I don't care how you do it, just having better judges, period. More judges and better judges would be another good answer to that question that I did not say, but we'll say now. And based on this conversation, I think that there is a lot to be said for near submissions being counted more, because you also had brought up a good point a while back that also sticks out in my mind, where you said at one point, you were like, if you are in a neutral position or a stalling position, and you get out of that position, does the stand up and the disconnection not count for something? You know what I mean? I think that plays right into this conversation, because it's like there should be value placed on the near misses, so to speak, like that. And I don't think that a lot of the judges are doing that. So yes, I think the answer to the question is yes, they should be counted more strongly, but then how much does it actually weigh into winning a round? That is going to be the big question, and that's where the actual individual judges come in, and that's why we need better judges, period. Because yes, if let's say that you had a round where you had some really good striking from one side, but a submission that was over a minute of potential for trying to finish the fight, but it didn't actually finish the fight, in some people's minds that should be a somewhat even round. And I think that there's value to that. Like, if you almost finished the fight, but you took some heavy shots beforehand, a certain judge will see it one way, a certain judge will see it the other way. I think that there is value to that submission attempt being counted as strongly as it deserves to, even though there was some decent damage on the other side.
I kind of like it. This is an interesting question because it gets to the gray areas of the sport. It's unfortunate that we are in the grapple era, the grappling era, excuse me, but the rule set hasn't actually changed anything about the scoring system that would benefit them. Obviously the officiating and the way that the judges score the fights, yes, like they can lean towards stalling, and that's like kind of like the loophole in the system is wrestling and stalling and grounding and holding them on the ground. But there's nothing actually that's giving them plus points, in technicality on the score system. So I think that's pretty interesting that maybe we are going to start to see some things that are going to help the grapplers and help people who are going to be in those grounded positions for a longer amount of times. They're going to start implementing things that just get them points and get them things that make the judges go, oh yeah, well, they did win that position there, even though we know they're not doing anything, but according to the rule book, they are.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about the gray areas of this sport. That's one of the reasons why I am always so fascinated by MMA, is that this is a sport that has so much gray area in it. There are so many small things that go into the sport that are a case-by-case basis, that are not covered in the rule set, that are specific to the certain instances themselves, specific to certain times of the sport and like the eras of the sport. It's always very subjective as well. There's a lot like all other sports have very definitive and rigidly defined rule sets that make sense for the application in that sport. It seems like MMA is one that still has a lot of lawlessness, and not I say that, that's kind of a charged term, but like there's like a lot of ambiguity, I guess is a better way to put it, in this sport. And it makes it very interesting, because one thing could happen in one fight, the same thing could happen in a different fight, and it's handled two different ways, and it's looked at two different ways.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But, it is what it is. We just got to keep watching the sport. And obviously the rule set is going to get adjusted accordingly. And we'll just have to keep up. And obviously, if you watch over time, you'll notice the trends in the officiating and how the judges score the fights. You'll pick up on, if in recent times, if they're starting to reward stalling, or if they're starting to reward standing up and actually, fighting. But
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, and hopefully we see some, changes coming down. I mean, really, if we take a step back, we can take a little bit of solace in the fact that we did have the 12-6 elbow recently made legal, and, the changes to the downed opponents rules were recently updated as well. So it's not like no movement is happening at all. And with that, hopefully it trends in the direction of better oversight, better officiating, and a continued fairness in the sport, or moving more towards fairness in the sport.
I definitely agree. Hopefully we get closer to that every single day.
I would like that very much. And so that ends the question. So I know that this was a little bit of a shorter one compared to what we generally do around here. But of course, as we've said many times now, MMA winter is very cold and we are still in the middle of it. So that is going to do it for this episode of the show. We will be back, at least for myself, tomorrow and doing the Matan Evan watches. Chase will be live on Friday. And yeah, I mean, youtube.com/@Yama Show for me. And Chase, I know you can tell them where they can find you for your stuff.
Absolutely. They will find me on youtube.com/AskCP Smalls. And of course, Friday, there is one that we will be watching at 6:30 in the morning on the dot. So
Bingo. Get up early, get yourself some coffee, and enjoy the fights. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us for this one. Again, I know it was a little bit of a different layout, different format, and something new for what we are doing around here. But we will come back when there are fights in the UFC. Of course, we will be talking about those. We'll figure out what we're doing next week if we end up doing another show in the last week of MMA Winter. Until then, we appreciate you always. Have a great rest of your night, a great rest of your week, and as always, fight on.